Hello and welcome to Two Moms That Talk, or it's just Two Moms Talk, I guess. I'm one mom. I'm Stephanie.
I'm another mom, and I'm Danelle, and we do in fact talk. We are talking at the moment.
And it's the day after 4th of July, so happy
Mhm.
Independence Day. Happy
Yes.
birthday, America.
Happy birthday to us.
And
The
we
signing
don't
of the
have any-
Declaration, really, but
we declared our independence,
yes.
right? So
Yep.
this is the day, like, we didn't get the Constitution. It was the Articles of Confederation first. And then it was like the Constitution, really 2.0, because Articles of Confederation was 1.0.
Yep.
But I hope you had a good holiday. I certainly did. We got together with our homeschool play group and had quite a long festival. I mean, my son was all day there for camp, and then I showed up around like 3:30, and we were there for fireworks. So
Nice.
yeah.
It rained here. Did it rain there on 4th of July?
It did not rain.
It
It thundered, but it did not.
poured all day up here. That's how far apart we are.
I know. Well, the thunderstorms are like that though, because sometimes
Yeah.
it'll even rain, on one side of town and not on the other. We might have gotten a few sprinkles. I might have lied, but it wasn't enough to like prevent us from being outside most of the time and doing fireworks. And it was quite a lovely.
Cleared up for us, and so much so that I went for a bike ride in the afternoon. Well, it was like 7:30 or something like that. So,
all right. Well, we don't have any 4th of July or Independence Day kind of things planned for tonight, but we certainly will be talking about some politics and trending items in the news this week. Just out today, actually, the Attorney General of our state here in Connecticut signed an amicus brief. And they're calling it defending the right or the privacy of transgender students. But I mean, I think in our perspective, we might see it a little bit differently. So we'll get into that.
We're calling it violating parents' rights.
Yeah.
Because that's what it does.
And really, even I would say argue more directly the individual rights of the children when you look at it from the point of being a minor. But we're going to talk about that. I'm in Stamford. We have some big local Stamford news we're trying to revise our city charter, which is almost like your constitution of your city in a way. And, the legislative session just ended, and there was, a little funny business going on at the State House that impacts the people's voice here in Connecticut or in Stamford. And
Connecticut.
And in Connecticut in general. Exactly, because now not just Stanford's charter, it just happens to be the one that's most immediately impacted, but this is a state thing. So it impacts all charters and all people's voices. So we should definitely talk about that. And then I think we're going to start off up top with a few just quick stories, quick headlines, I think are probably important just for PSAs as well, for people about if you're going out hiking. Our first story here. There was 3 camp counselors that were injured by bobcats, and it actually was such a big story. Apparently, it was the type of story that was picked up by the New York Times, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, well, wow. I subscribe to the New York Times because I think it's really interesting. They're a really good source to kind of get that mainstream take on things, and it's annoying always have to like go through the back door to look it up. So I do subscribe to the New York Times. Oops, that's the wrong thing. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Were you inspired because you were camping this weekend? So you're like, we have to talk about the campers?
No, I just actually think it's a really good PSA for people when they're going out to keep these things in mind. Is that okay? Did we get it? Boom, we got it. Having a few issues there. So yeah, I did go camping. So it's certainly, whenever you're camping and out in the wilderness away, and we weren't super away from wilderness, let's be honest. They had amenities on site, but you're staying in a tent. You're more exposed to the outdoors. You do have less of the nice things that you have at home, and there's more wild animals that are around. So there was 3 camp counselors that were injured by a bobcat, and one of the many beautiful state parks in Connecticut. Connecticut is a beautiful state.
Yes, it is.
And I just wanted to kind of share this headline. We're not going to read through the story too much, but if you're going out there, and I highly encourage you to get out there.
Yes, get some sunlight, hike. It's gorgeous, but be prepared. But although this bobcat had rabies, so it was just like terrible luck. I mean, bobcats in general don't want to mess with people. Like they're not going to randomly attack people, but he or she, I don't know.
That's true. This certainly is not meant to be like anti-bobcat.
No.
Cats. We love the bobcats. They happen to have rabies. It's probably the government's fault. Like, I'll say that.
I'm saying that for my own anxiety, so that when I'm hiking tomorrow, I'm not like, is that a bobcat?
Right. No, that's a good point. That is a good point too. If you see the animals out there, they don't want to attack you, right?
No.
And if you
want to get away from you,
there's something, usually you make yourself like look kind of big. Just, Google it before you go out for more specific advice. But
yes, we're not professional hikers here, although we both do like to hike.
I do hiking. I try to be prepared when I see wild animals. I try to keep my distance, but also I do know that they don't want to attack me. So I just stay calm. I, stay still, make yourself look big or walk the other direction, things like that.
See, because I live so far out there, bobcats are a little bit like raccoons in my mind. Like they're just there. I know they're there. What freaks me out a little bit more are the coyotes, because they're very, very loud here. So It sounds like a woman is being assaulted, frankly, like exactly I lived in cities for many years, and that sound of like screaming, like coming up, if you're up on a higher floor, like that is what it sounds like when the coyotes are talking to each other. It is very unsettling.
They get going.
And they're like screaming at each other. It's horrifying. Anyway, but yeah, so.
All right. Yeah, I mean, around here we have, I think, foxes, a lot of deer, and a lot of little foxes.
Yeah.
So sometimes you'll see a little red tail sticking out of the bushes here and there. Another story we have is about the Christmas tree shop are closing, apparently. They're mired in bankruptcy. And now I wasn't a big Christmas tree shop person, but my mom loves the Christmas tree shop. And I feel like there's a lot of them around Connecticut.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know. I was a little surprised to see that, just because they're kind of a discounty place. I'm also not a frequent flyer there. I don't know. I don't really frequent many stores. I'm an anti-shopper type, except for thrift stores. I get everything in thrift store pretty much.
Okay, I like that. Do you have like a local place that you go?
Yeah, the Stafford thrift store. Oh, I shouldn't say that because now everybody's going to come, but it's amazing. It is so good that it's ridiculous. And I've got some places like I like to go and check out different spots, and I go up to whenever I go to see my brother in Boston. We have, the girls now. I've trained my girls. This is how you save some cash and get really high quality stuff. Anyway, so
I'm just gonna guess that it's like online shopping, right? Because I think certainly, there is still a big dollar store, kind of like under $5 market.
Right.
But at the same time, as that online shopping market grows and you can get really cheap goods delivered straight to your house.
Yeah.
I mean, because like Christmas tree shop, I feel like is at the higher end of the lower end shops.
Right.
Versus like a Dollar General, which is now $1.25 by us, by the way.
Oh yes, I'm aware. One thing, the stores we do have in town: Tractor Supply, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Family Dollar.
Okay, there you go. We have a Dollar General.
That is all we have here. Anything else?
Pop in town over there.
Mm-hmm. When we got the Tractor Supply, I was thrilled. Like people were so excited that was coming. It was like back in the day, if a Target had come here when I first moved here, I would have been like, we are set. Because I moved from Chicago, so it was like, I don't know. It was an adjustment. Let me say that.
Well, there's definitely a lot of changes that have been happening very quickly, I feel like, and that parents have been asked to adjust to, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to make this adjustment right here. Our attorney general here in the state of Connecticut has joined a group of attorney generals from around the state. So the group is now up to 16 attorney generals have signed an amicus brief, which is basically like when you sign a letter of support, or I guess you can file against maybe as well, for the lawsuit, like giving your opinion on the lawsuit for the court to consider. And they're supporting the school's ability to protect the privacy of transgender students who have shared their identity with school staff. So in other words, if a student tells a teacher, hey, I'm, having this gender identity issue, or I want to identify as this gender that is different from the one I am, the teacher is not required to divulge that information to the parents.
Well, I mean, if they're trying to kill the public school system, this is a real fast way to do it. Because if they're coming right out and saying this, people will continue to leave in droves, and it's just going to be sad. It's going to be a sad state of affairs. I mean, I don't understand why they would want to try to drive a wedge between parents in this issue. Parents have made it very clear that we want to know. I mean, and also, people, the argument is, well, what if somebody won't accept them and they'd be abusive toward them? Well, that's why we have family services. Child protective services can be involved if there's a real abusive situation, but you can't just assume all parents are abusers. That's what they're doing here. They're
right.
like, okay, we have to assume it's not going to be accepted. Why is that the assumption? That's a ridiculous, insane assumption.
Right. Well, this is what he says. That's basically his quote, is saying outing students against their will is dangerous. Like outing somebody means like it used to be a thing for gay students, like coming out, right? Or like out that you knew nobody else knew and you told everybody. So outing students against their will is dangerous. Students, especially LGBTQ plus youth who may lack support at home, need trusted adults. Yeah, and like, what does that mean? Lack support at home? Like, what kind of, like, what's exactly, it's like a broad statement.
I mean, this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. As you know,
right.
I have family members, I have friends, very, very close friends that are going through this right now. And the notion that, first of all, the parents aren't already aware, in large part. I mean, I had a dear friend of mine, and it was very upsetting to me. And I'm still not totally over it. She's a teacher. And she said, the parents that care, no. And that's not fair, because if you're a parent that cares, but you just think your kid is a tomboy or effeminate and you're just letting them have some space, they might not really understand that this is a very different position that they're taking. So I thought that was really a terrible way to talk about parents from a teacher's perspective. But on the other hand, I mean, teachers only hear from parents when there's a problem. And I think that they have some teachers, especially in the middle school, which is largely where this is happening. I mean, it's brutal. I mean, you taught in high school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And high school is not easier, but it's definitely different than middle school. I think middle school is so super intense, that I have a lot of patience for middle school teachers, but I just cannot abide by any of this stuff. Like the assumption that I would abuse my child because I didn't agree is insane.
And the way that they put this, it's like, you have to do this or your student is going to be at risk for suicide and all these things.
There is zero evidence that that's true. That's the other thing. They are just propagating a lie. They're lying to parents. They're lying to the court. He should be held in contempt because that's ridiculous. It's ludicrous.
Well, they do have their sources, though.
Ludicrous.
They do have their sources. Let's read it and let's see what he says. So again, this is officially put out, the press release by the Attorney General's office. So this is his specific quote here, but really everything in this brief is his official point of view. So it goes on to say, the coalition of attorneys general argue that requiring schools to out students against their will would undermine trust between students and teachers. See, it would undermine. That's the relationship that they're focused on, right? Creating impractical administrative burdens for schools and improperly inserting school officials in private conversations that should be between parents and children. What? Hold on. We have to read that again, because that is a weird statement, is it not?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense, actually. Wait.
So the coalition of attorneys general arguing that requiring schools to out students against their will would undermine trust between students and teachers. Okay. Creating impractical administrative burdens for schools. So it would be really hard for the schools to have to like call and inform the parents. Apparently, that's like, you know, they couldn't
just wrap that into the IEP because most of these kids already have one.
Right, exactly.
They're meeting with them regularly. How are they going to feel lying to their faces?
What's the next part though? And improperly inserting school officials into private conversations that should be between parents and children. So I guess it's saying like, if a kid wants their parent to know, they'll tell their parent. And like the student is allowed to have their relationship with the teacher. And if the student wants the parent involved in that, they'll bring them in.
Teachers are not doctors. They do not have any, there's zero, there's no contract, at least the social contract that I'm aware of, where whatever you say in a classroom stays in the classroom. It is assumed whatever happens in the classroom, your parents are going to be called because you need to behave properly. So this is absolutely ludicrous. Again, I say it's just maniacal. I mean, okay, let them do it, because people are going to leave, and you know,
I know, but I hate to have that attitude, right? Like, I can't sit here and act like that didn't flash through my mind, right? The thought, like, yeah, like, I'm glad they're going fully insane, because my problem in being like gleeful almost in them is that I know that it's at the demise of kids. Like, I know that there are going to be kids who are victims in hopefully what is just the short term, you know, at the very least.
Some of these kids are cutting their breasts off. It's not the short term, and they can't.
Well, I know, but I just mean like the amount, hopefully, like, you know, I'm not saying what happens to the kid is short term, right? I'm saying like hopefully we can prevent this from happening, you know, like right as soon as possible. Like in the short term, we can stop this, so it has that effect for the least amount of kids. So that's why I can't even sit here and say that, like, yeah, like, I hope they crack down. Like, I hope, like, you know, that's almost when people,
there's no,
I hope the economy fails so that Trump doesn't get reelected. Sure. It's like, oh yeah, you hope that poor people suffer. So like some do it, you know, like that's how I feel about that. It's like, I can't hope that like kids are going to suffer just to show off how insane the Democrats are. It's just like, just stop being freaking insane. Like, how about that? You know?
Well, I mean, on the other hand, people keep voting for them, so maybe we're the crazy ones. You know, I don't understand how Tom got back in. I just, none of it makes any sense to me. I don't think they know what they're voting for, and it's going to take.
That's true. That's been my whole point. Is like when I went through and I read the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action, because I know people were putting up posts so soon after the decision came out. You weren't reading it. You weren't reading a 200-page document, or it was almost 200 pages, or maybe it was 140. I can't remember. It was like well over 100 pages. And so I know people weren't reading it. I bet you people don't even know what it looks like, you know, like what the decision looks like, or that there's like the court's decision, and then there's concurring decisions, and then there's the dissenting decision, and then there's like, you know, people get to write their own dissentings. Just such basic things. And I do hope, though, like, I'm not sitting here trying to just trash everybody. I think that this is an opportunity, and I hope that we can just realize that just slowing down a little bit, taking the time to read the actual source material rather than just working off of headlines and articles. Because that's the problem, is like we let the article headlines program us. We let them program us to have these knee-jerk responses rather than.
Well, I mean, you have to have a filter, right? Like you said yourself at the beginning of this, you use the New York Times as a filter. I have the Wall Street Journal as my filter, and so, you know, I feel like it's hard.
But like I pick my filters, I guess, like very, like I curate them, right? Like I seek them out, and that's another difference too, is that when you're just accepting what you're given, these free services on social media, versus like seeking them out. So like I seek out the New York Times because I know that my social media feeds lean towards what you might call the right, or like libertarian, or like liberty, health, freedom stuff. So I'm going out of my way to be like, hey, I want to expose myself to this other, more like establishment left-leaning point of view. I do also try to watch like the Young Turks, or like the Damage Report, which is what's that guy, Seth or whatever his name is, like Emma Vigeland. She was just on Tim Cast, that's going pretty viral right now. So, and she's like left. And then I'll listen to like the Daily Wire guys. Like they're really good for like getting like, okay, what's like the mainstream right point of view, you know, because like that's also something.
No, I hear you. I also do similarly, although I don't listen to the Damage Report, but I listen to the, you know, the Young Turks, and, you know, and you're right, like, because my feed likewise is more libertarian or, you know, right leaning. And then I just feel like I don't want to be in my own silo either. So I have to see what's going on. Although I have enough friends and family keep me in check. They're like, well, that's not how I see it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I do just want to say though that they, in this article up here, right, they have their own whole set of research that they do say.
Yes, but the Trevor Project,
they're saying this is what they say it shows, though. That they say that it shows that LGBTQ youth who report the presence of trusted adults in their schools have higher self-esteem than those without access to trusted adults. The LGBT youth who found their school and home to be affirming report lower rates of attempting suicide. So
it's just inaccurate. It's just not correct. I mean, I forget who did a whole expose. I want to say the Weinsteins debunked the Trevor report, or maybe it wasn't them. Basically, like at this point, the Trevor report is like jibber jabber. It's just like it's malarkey, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's some information they've gathered, but their conclusions don't match up with reality.
What I've noticed, how the way that, so this is, and you can see right on the top, they have like the suicide thing as their headline. This is such a weird picture, like with the hand so big like that.
It's a strange perspective, but
yeah, it's so weird. The thing that I noticed about research, and you have to be, I would say, like pretty into research and reading it and looking at the actual numbers and the data and understanding the methods.
Well, so my husband's a statistician. I don't know if you remember that. That's like what he does. And so whenever I see things like that, I say, I want to see the actual data. And I want to know what the design of that was. I want to know what questions, how they were asked. Was it a Likert scale? How did you collect this information? Because it really matters. You know, the book is very popular, How to Lie with Statistics.
You mean one of Bill Gates' favorite books?
Bill Gates, Obama, like everybody's got that. I'm not even
saying that. Yeah, these people like legitimately like have gone on live TV and been like, "Oh, look at my favorite book." Like,
yeah, right. That's thanks to that nod to your credibility, you jackass. But anyway.
Yeah, but that's what they do.
It's a thing. I mean, it's very easy.
Mess with like what they're actually measuring. They're like, oh, it's safe and effective. And we're like, oh, good. It's like, we have this conception of what safe and effective is, but really it's like safe and effective for this very limited thing that they tested.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation, and something that I really learned a lot about over COVID as I was digging into a broader amount of research than I had ever done before. Like, most of my data work was pretty limited to just test scores and student tracking data. And, you have the back end systems that kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So admittingly, my data and statistics aren't great. I'm much better at kind of having somebody else do that kind of stuff, and then taking what they say and then translating it and doing the summary end work of stuff. But what I did notice, instead of going to the conclusion of the research, which most people do, they go to like the introduction and then the conclusion of the research. They're like, I read the research, but where you really need to go is the methods, as you were saying, and then also to like the appendixes that have some of the charts with the actual raw data. So those would be
tough, because I'm such a skeptic about data, because I understand too well, whether it's through osmosis or just my own, I mean, I was in finance before this, so I had huge data sets that I was looking at. I understand how easy it is, even innocently, like, my husband's got PhD students and they're coming to conclusions from data, and they're not doing it like accident. They're not trying to have that outcome. They have in their mind like what they think might happen, right? And then they see the numbers a certain way, and then he has to peel that back routinely. I mean, it's a whole class on that stuff. So I think misinterpreting the data, bad data collection, it's very difficult to really get accurate numbers. And even when you do, those numbers don't speak to the general population very well. It's like, okay, you can have like averages and that's fine, but that doesn't really tell you how you should handle your child in a situation like that. And so it's not, I don't find that sort of data particularly useful, especially when it's so complex. Like each student is so different and each child is so different. I have 3 children.
Right.
Each one of them is dramatically different. I would tell them information in different ways, even. And so the notion that you can just like pen something that's going to be perfect for, oh yes, we should definitely not tell all parents for any children, because this is what's best for everyone.
I mean, I just think that they just need to flip the baseline assumption. The baseline assumption should be that students are supportive. And this is actually something I was going to say before, is that it feels like on the one hand, they do make this nod, right? The new thing, if you listen to what Randy Weingarten and Becky Pringle, those are the heads of the 2 largest teachers unions, the big thing that they're talking about now are community schools with wraparound services. And they do this thing where they talk out of both sides, sort of like this thing is like, on the one hand, they want to make sure that within the school they can give the kid everything they need, but then they're also like, oh, it's the center of the community, we want to get everybody involved, we need more parents there. I mean, teachers talk all the time about how they want more parents.
They don't want the parents. They don't want the parents.
Support. Yes, exactly. So then when stuff like this happens, it just seems so converged.
Parents complicate things, as his amicus brief states. It's a logistical nightmare to involve parents.
That's crazy. That is the most crazy. I think that's actually the craziest part, right?
Well, that's a good, we should, someone should write an article about that, because it just says everything you need to know. And so what else are they withholding from you? A lot. What I found out is that administration and teachers are like, it'll be fine. Meanwhile, your kid is freaking out. They're throwing tantrums, and you're like, what the hell happened? Oh, I don't know. He got beat up in the bathroom the other day. Did you think maybe that would be relevant to inform a parent? Well, I mean, nobody was hurt. Listen, all I can say is I'm trying my best not to absolutely hate all teachers. I literally am a teacher bigot at this point. I cannot stand when somebody tells me they're a teacher. Before, I used to think, wow, that's such a tough job. And now I think, wow, how can you look at yourself in the mirror? If I was a teacher,
So, I mean, I share your frustrations.
I would be broadcasting so many messages, and I would wear T-shirts that say, I'm not one of them. I'm not Randy Weingarten. I would disassociate so hard and fast that no one.
But you're different. But you have to realize that you're not the average person, I would say, like, regardless, right? So I mean, I don't think that it's
I homeschool is what she means. And so I have long before any of this stuff.
I think though that it's not good to see the teachers as our enemies.
I'm trying not to. What I'm telling you is
we need to, in fact, we need to be, the teachers are the parents. Like,
Stephanie, what do you think parents are going to feel after they read what Tong just wrote?
I mean, they're not going to read it. That's the thing. They don't read it. They're not going to read it. They're not going to read it.
They might, if it gets into the headlines and they find out, okay, you know, I don't know. We're reading it. We're reading it.
I know, but
there are some parents out there that will find out.
Share this out, guys. Share out this stream to all your friends so they get this headline.
But try not to hate your teachers.
I don't think, listen, I have deep frustrations with teachers, and I think that they should be more willing to call out the system and call out, you know, they make a lot of like they do a lot of the activism stuff, you know, but I feel like it's sort of like the accepted activism, whereas like I really would like them to more directly call out the system, right? I would really have liked them to not sat around while schools were closed for so long and sat around while thousands of teachers got fired for not taking, you know, the shot in New York City.
That's why they don't
like that. I would have liked that. But at the same time, like, I do like very much empathize with teachers who have basically their whole life savings wrapped up in the job, right? Like they're halfway in or 20 years in and they're vested. And if they leave now, then they don't get their full pension. Like,
I totally get it.
So I have to say, like, I get it. And I want to both be able to like hold teachers accountable and like keep it real. But I also think that they do deserve credit. They do deserve to, you know, have, you know, be seen for, I think that most people like their kids' teachers, like when they have a good teacher. And I had a lot of them, you know, growing up, teachers that we loved. I had teachers in my school who I worked with who were amazing teachers.
Okay, Stephanie, that world's dead. That world is dead. I'm sorry.
I mean,
it's
like,
dead and gone.
I
always tell my husband this.
Listen, even teachers who you think like have not great political stances can sometimes be really good at giving like delivering instruction and like be like I see it. I see these teachers who I'm like not so sure about some of their political stances and their activism, but I've also seen them be really good at delivering instruction and building relationships with their students. Not always, right? Obviously, we have a dearth of instructional leaders in our school.
I don't know. I'm very
school
conflicted.
Has great teachers. And I think it's definitely more of a structural issue. At some point, structure meets individual. Yes. I do want to just pull up this one article I had up here because this is sort of...
This is not helping.
This is the logical end, right? This is the logical end of all of these policies that we've been called across the headlines of the Hartford Courant conspiracy theorists. But we're not making it up. Like this is April 2019. This is 4 years ago.
I wish we had this when that bill was in front of us. I'm so mad we didn't have it. I don't know how we did.
Yeah. But and so this isn't just like a crazy headline that pedophilia being taught as sexual orientation in California schools. There's a video here that shows exactly what happened. So I'll read it because the video, it's a little like the sound isn't great. But it says there's a stunning admission came after parent information meeting last month for the Brea Olinda Unified School District. So this is in California. Stephanie Yates, founder of Informed Parents of California, asked school officials why they were teaching pedophilia to ninth graders. But instead of denying such an atrocity taking place, a top school official confirmed it was happening and acted like nothing was wrong with it. She says, this is done because we are talking about historical perspectives of how gender relations and different types of sexual orientations have existed in history, said BOUSD Assistant Superintendent. And then this is the video.
BOUSD, you mean BULLSHIT. Like she's just full of it. Full of it.
And responding to your questions, and I will go ahead and email you back or give you a call.
Now you're normalizing anal sex and you're teaching that to the high schoolers. You're not going to answer the question.
No, I'm not against.
But not in front of everybody.
You're not interested in hearing on those guards and sitting here.
Parents are not interested.
So I love, they are, the ladies are still sitting here.
Okay, so answer me why you're teaching pedophilia.
So the first question she asked was, why are you teaching about anal sex? All right. And then one was like, oh, we'll talk about that somewhere else or something. Yeah. Right. And now she's asking the question about the pedophilia.
Pedophilia in school to ninth graders.
Teaching what?
Pedophilia, pederasty, right here.
Pederasty, as I discussed with you before, twice in my office when you come to view the materials, I've explained to you that this is done because we are talking about historical perspectives of how gender relations and different types of sexual orientations have existed in history. So this is
Types of sexual orientations.
something that's occurred in history, and so this is really important for us to include.
So that's the key right there, right? Is they're calling pedophilia a sexual orientation.
Which is exactly what we were calling out in that bill, and no one would listen to us. That is so infuriating. And there it is. There it is. Well, I did send that to Leslie Wolfgang yesterday.
Right. So, okay. I'm glad that you did. So yeah, and then this is sort of like, I guess this isn't in the video, but this is the exact point. So sex between a man and a boy is a sexual orientation, she asked. Torres did not deny it. It's something that occurred in history, and so it's really important for us to include, the assistant superintendent said, implying that, yes, sexual relations between man and boy, properly considered rape under laws of the state and every state, is a sexual orientation. And if you remember, they also changed age to be a protected class. Mm-hmm. So my thinking is that a kid can basically say that, oh no, I want to be with this person, and because age is protected, we can't tell them no because we would be discriminating against them.
Exactly.
But whereas,
well, that's one thing.
That's very typical of somebody who's being abused to identify with their abuser.
Yeah, they don't realize that this is an inappropriate relationship because they're a child, and they feel like this is, they get love bombed, and that's part of the whole grooming process. So it's just absolutely disgusting. I couldn't be more outraged. I'm just like, this is why I was like, well, let them blow it up, because it doesn't help for me to get like completely frantic about it. My children are not going to be impacted, but people aren't paying attention. They're just not. Parents are not paying attention, and their poor children are going to suffer like they've never thought in a million years they would suffer. And our whole society is going to suffer. It's very.
I mean, I am hopeful that more people are, quote unquote, waking up, that the problem is you don't hear the people leaving, right? The people leaving, it's quiet. They just go.
That's right. That's exactly right.
They are going. They are going. I think
our school system lost since 2019, 250 students, 250. We only have 280 students in the entire student body in the entire high school. It's a tiny, tiny little town. So for them to lose that much.
Wait, so now you only have a class of 50 kids?
Yeah, they're like, maybe I'm under, it's like about 80. Like some classes are like a little bit bigger. You know what I mean? There's like a bulk. I think it's like the 5th grade is particularly big.
Okay.
But like in the high school, it's about.
Do you guys get rid of a lot of teachers? Like what?
Oh no, because of course that they lose their minds if you want to let go of a teacher. But we did actually. this year we let go of a first grade teacher. And of course, everybody's all torn to shreds about it. I'm like, people, if we're no longer bringing in 100 per class, we're now bringing in 80 a class. We don't need, here's what happened out here is because you can't go backwards in funding because it's mandated, right? They got used to having 12 kids in a class. What a joy. And, I'm thinking what an idiot I am because I'm using the Catholic system. And I'm paying a lot of money to have 12 kids in a class. I could have had it right here, but I don't know, whatever. That was just my own personal choice, but it's absurd. So this year, we still don't have a budget. They voted down the first one. They voted down the second one. We'll see. We'll see what happens with the third.
Well, I think a great thing for people to watch is I watched this documentary on the subway guy, Steve. I had said this on one of my other streams. I can't find the video right now, but it's on this woman, Stephanie Harlow's page on YouTube. You can just like check her out and then type in like Steve, the subway guy, who's also a pedo. And I think oh, here it is, right? The child predator. Oh, it's Jared. I don't know why I said Steve.
Steve
was like
I was like, what are you talking about? Okay, Jared,
yes. Okay. I think Steve was the Blues Clues guys who also had
I was legit thinking like the subway. I went to like the attack and I'm like, I don't think that they were pedophiles. What?
No.
Okay, Jared, the subway guy. Yes.
Sorry, yes. And it's because it's out of the context of like the trans conversation. I think that it helps you just see like grooming for what it is and how these predators put themselves in positions to have access to kids, because he actually teams up with this guy who is the head of the youth programs at like the American Heart Association or the Red Cross.
I don't remember.
But one of these other organizations, he's the head of the youth program. And then they're both like, oh, like they both start telling each other that they're into kids, and they go out and he starts like a whole foundation and hires this guy as the head of his foundation, and they go around and just like party and like creep on kids.
Well, not that, I just cannot not say that this week was the opening week for The Sound of Freedom, which is about trafficking kids and grooming children for pedophilia is part of the traffic. I haven't seen it yet, but I just know this because weirdly, I've been through trainings for trafficking. And so, previous life. So anyway, grooming is a similar process when it comes to children for anything, like whether it be for pedophilia, whether it could even be like parents, like divorced parents groom their own children to side with them. And it's all very, very similar tactics. It just like kind of looks a little bit different based on
I mean, to be honest, and like I don't want to be like weird or anything, I think it's even like, even if you have like a friend or somebody who you're like trying to get used to the idea of like going somewhere or doing some activity that you like, right? You just do it slowly. You start to bring it up and mention it here and there, and
you desensitize them.
Right. But like, I don't think it's always like, it doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing, right? The way that you do it, like you can, they use it, and they do it in an abusive way. Like they do it in an abusive way to introduce inappropriate things. Another big thing that they talked about was the one guy, not Jared, he had married this woman who had 2 daughters. And him and the woman he married, they just started always having like sexual conversations around the kids to like get them used to being like, oh, it's totally normal and okay to talk about these things. They're like, I think they were like 11 and 13 at the time. So they would not really have any context or idea that it wasn't okay.
Right. I mean, it's like, it's also like cognitive behavioral therapy in reverse.
Exactly.
So, because exposure therapy is a thing. And if you're really afraid, like I am, of spiders, I really don't like spiders. But I'm much better with spiders, even though I sometimes freak out if there's a really big one, like there was on my leg the other day. I had to take some deep breaths, but it does help to, you know, be around them, know that they're not going to actually, well, some of them do jump at you, by the way. Wolf spiders, they like to attack. They're not very nice spiders. And also tarantulas in the Dominican, they love to jump at you. Very scary.
I can't say I have any experience with that.
Well, I've had a lot of experience with a variety of different spiders. And I think that's actually over time compared. It might look the same on the outside. I might still scream or like react, but internally I can bring myself down much faster. You know what I mean? And that's just from years of like, okay, literally talking myself through it. Like, it is a small creature. It eats mosquitoes. We need them for the environment. You know, like I have to tell myself all this stuff, but being around it is helpful. I mean, even just moving from an urban environment to the country, it took me a very long time to go to sleep because I was so used to urban sounds that the silence was horrifying to me. I was just like, oh my gosh. And then, you know, once the coyotes started, I was like, well, I know what that sounds like. It wasn't pleasant, but I was like, okay, I know what that is, but I was panicked that, you know, there was actually something happening outside the door. But now, you know, with time, you get used to it, right? And now I'm sort of used to both because I go to Boston fairly frequently.
You're flexible now?
I'm flexible now. It's made me an easier going person, I think.
I thought we would finish off with this story here. I haven't really read much into it. I know that it was a piece of legislation. I think it was passed during the 2022 session.
Oh, right.
Wow. To start the baby bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And it went into effect, I guess, officially on July 1st. So Nolan OCL Osorio Ramirez.
I completely forgot about this.
Money invested on his behalf for his future. So let's get some more details here. So this past weekend, Connecticut became the first state in the country. Oh, look, we're the first at something instead of being the worst. Like the taxpayer debt burden. Over $60,000 we owe this state. We pay millions of dollars a year in debt for our unfunded liabilities. It's ridiculous. But here we are funding the futures of babies. Hopefully they'll be better than the people who are in office now.
Well, this is partially where our money's going. But I mean, actually, if I was going to personally, I'm actually pro baby bonds. I really am.
Okay.
I mean, I know, like, you know, it's a very socialist perspective, I suppose. But like, if we're going to help people, I love this way of helping them because they can't get it until they're older.
All right. Well, let's see what the details are. The details are. It's about building a future full of opportunity for everyone, regardless of what zip code you're born into or what resources your parents have, said Connecticut State Treasurer Eric Russell. Any child whose birth is covered by Husky, the state Medicaid program, will have $3,200 invested on their behalf by the state treasurer's office. I wonder, whose birth is covered. So you have to be born. You can't already be alive. Russell says as many as 15,000 children could benefit from baby bonds. A year could benefit from them. We can now say to our children, we can now say yes to our children, and we can say yes every single year. And this is the Department of Social Services, Andrea Barton Reeves. Children in the program will be able to apply to receive the money once they turn 18. With the 6.9% assumed rate of return, this money can grow to nearly $11,000 per child by the time that child is able to access the funds. We want Connecticut to be a state of opportunity, said Governor Lamont. Baby bonds are an investment in hope. I want to know the details.
I think those are the details.
I don't know, because I don't think it is the details. Because my question is, first of all, they've said many times that we're putting money aside to do this or to do that, or, you know, people pay their.
Or you think they're not going to fund it?
Pension funds. Yeah, it's going to be another one of these unfunded things that goes on, that some slush fund or just like something that they can brag about, but it's completely unfunded. Or I want to know also, like, when we're talking about bonds, like when we talk about blockchain and tracking, and like, what are the details about this financial asset? Your name, how is it connected to the government? What are the strings attached? Like, again, it sounds nice. It sounds great. Like if we're talking about like, oh, if government could do something good, right? But like, that's a big premise right there. Like we're assuming that government really can like do something that's like proactively good, right? Like it just doesn't.
I don't know. I kind of want to believe it.
So
let me have my little dream. After I was hating on the teachers, I don't know. I feel like of all the stupid ideas they have, this is the least stupid I've heard. You know what I mean? Like if we're going to have welfare, I like this plan better.
All right. And people can use it to buy a home, start a business, pay for college, or roll into their retirement savings account.
Yeah. They can't just take it.
Or 0101B says, as you say, social services, all I can see is the Twilight Zone episode To Serve a Man, a recipe book. I don't know. Are you a Twilight Zone person?
Mm-mm.
I don't know the reference. Sorry.
Sorry. The reference.
Oh man. So I mean, yeah, again,
thanks for watching.
Oh, and look, they have Cory Booker discusses. So again, this is why I get suspicious, because Cory Booker's in Jersey, right? And guess Connecticut and New Jersey have so much in common in terms of like their policy pathways that they follow. And what we both have a lot of are hedge funds. And these hedge funds create certain financial products, and they get into all sorts of deals with the government. And
well, they're risky. I mean, hedge funds, that's why there's a big payoff, right? Because you're hedging against one thing and hoping that that's going to be the right hedge.
Yeah, so I wonder, I don't know if this for sure, like this would have something that we'd have to do more research in. I just wonder what the real details are. Like the financial product itself, how it's tied to the kid, and especially
well,
with
if it's a bond, that's a very discreet type of investment. You know, it's the safest, one of the safest investments you can make. That's why it doesn't yield very much. I mean, you're talking about 18 years.
16.9% though.
No, 6.9.
I'm sorry, 6.9%. Like that's a pretty average assumed rate of return though, right? Like if people assume any more than that, regardless, like on the open stock market or not, I think isn't 7% like the average of the stock market over the history. So
yeah, but I mean, you're going to get that amount back. I mean, the bond says it on the face, unless we go bankrupt, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder, did they make these like in the old dollar, or these on like the Fed dollar? Because they started, it didn't like the Fed now, doesn't that like start or something?
I don't know. I'm not following that close enough, but yeah, I think you're right. There could be, the devil is always in the details, right? And so I'm sure that it would be interesting to see how they've structured it. But since they're literally calling this baby bonds and they're giving it to babies,
I know,
the PR nightmare of screwing this up.
They love to give like a nice tag to it. It has the alliteration, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's not a freaking bond at all. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh God,
they do it all the time. It's a sexual orientation. Come on.
Fair enough. You know? You are righteously skeptical. I am not saying that that's that you shouldn't be. I just like.
Right. I want to help the babies. I want to help.
I totally want to help the babies.
And I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm not saying I'm against it. Like I'm not anti-baby bonds. Like I'm not being like, oh, they're freaking socialist.
I mean, I'm sure some people.
I just want to know more about the details, especially because here's the thing: is that we can say, oh, it's so great, but you know what? If we give a kid $11,000 when they're 18 years old, and our state is, you know, twice as far in debt, like instead of being $63,000 per taxpayer liability, we're 126. Like, who cares? Like, what? $11,000? Like, no. It's, to me, it seems like I can, again, I know there's like differentials in the amount of wealth that different demographics have. I think 2/10 is what the Black community has compared to the white community. So I'm certainly not trying to discount any of these things or not seriously consider them and just push them to the side. But I do truly have to question, what are the impacts that we don't see? And are we really better off giving, telling the government to be in charge of this money rather than just like not having as many tax liabilities over our lifetime?
Well, what I would have liked to have seen, here's what would have made me super happy. If instead of funding a certain welfare program that hasn't proven to be effective, we instead took that pot of money and said, you know what we're going to do? Instead of doing this, we're going to give it to the babies, and we're going to see if we can change this generational wealth issue. And, I mean, so.
Well, I don't know about that either. Like, I definitely want to know more about that. I do know that there is some research that has shown by giving people direct cash payments up to a certain amount, it improves their child's performance in school, but it's like kind of a narrow window. And I don't know the research too well to know that if it was like done. I know there's people out there saying things like that. But again, I worry, I just feel like, we have to give the government our money in the first place, including those babies, including those families, right? Mm-hmm. Because they all pay sales tax. They all feel the burden of the taxes no matter what, right? Even if they're not paying as much taxes as other people or get tax refunds, this and that, they're still paying taxes, right? And they're still paying through inflation, paying through all these other secondary impacts. What if we just didn't give the government so much money in the first place? And I would love that. More of it, so that's what I'm saying. I just feel like we should at least be able to have the conversation without pointing at each other and being like, you're a socialist, you're a heartless capitalist that just wants to enrich the rich. No, I want to come to a conversation in good faith and truly weigh out both sides. And maybe I have my characterization of one or both sides wrong or off in this way or another way. But I want to have that conversation. So.
Well, I mean, maybe you probably know this about me by now, but, ideally, we don't collect any taxes whatsoever. And then the taxes that we do collect, I get to write a check for.
That would be like I don't want to have the automatic withdrawal, which was Milton Friedman, by the way, guys, like one of the most renowned, libertarian free market thinkers of all time.
He screwed us.
He was young at the time, I guess, in his defense, and a bit naive. And I think that's just the problem with bureaucracy in general, is it makes you think you can do more than you can, even if you're like a diehard free market libertarian. But perhaps we should
make sense at the time.
Yeah, like if you think about it in those, that's what I'm saying. Like when you're thinking about legislation in these small confines and not out in the real world, you forget so easily. All right, so this is the Twilight Zone thing. So this is the comment, right? Oh. He's going to explain this episode. So aliens arrived, which we've been hearing a lot about aliens lately. So
apparently they've been here a lot. Even though
they're undersea, they're in the space, they're all around. So they said they wanted to help humanity and presented Earthlings with a book with their plans in their own language. Our geniuses worked tirelessly to translate it before countdown. It was translated to be a recipe book with ways to cook us.
Nice. Exactly.
Choosing where our tax dollars go.
Okay.
How would the military industrial complex and Congress pay for their yachts and wars?
All right, 101B. That's shorthand for whatever that long handle is. I'm with you now. I get it.
No, I agree.
That's a good reference.
They need us. There was a good Project Veritas video. No, it wasn't Project Veritas. It was actually James O'Keefe on his new thing, OMG. Doing with that BlackRock guy. He's kind of a young kid.
I did see that.
He's a young kid. He was we love war and all these things, So.
I know. Now I'm old enough. You're not quite old enough, but as I watched that kid say all that stuff, I was like, stop talking. You're ruining your life, because he's so young. You know what I mean? It's like, what is he just got? I feel like maybe he's been there a year. You know what I mean? Like he just fresh out of college, and I don't know. But yeah,
so do you think though that do you think that what he's saying is legit?
Yes.
Like that he knows those things, or do you think that he's just saying it to like make himself sound bigger and badder than he is?
Well, it's always a combination of that, especially when there's drinks and a girl involved, right? Or a boy. I don't remember what the
It was a girl. It was
orientation was. Okay. So, probably a little bit of both, right? But just the fact that just his luck, I don't know. He just seemed
right. Well, I'm just saying, like, if you were at least like, if you were kind of like BSing, like, don't you think you would want to lie the other way? Right. Like, I mean, if I were a good person, I'd be like, oh no, they're not that bad. Right. Like, I know people say those things, but.
Well, I think if you work in that environment, you have to kind of steel yourself and be like, yeah, this is what we do. This is who we are. Like at a certain point, you can't, there's only so much denial you can,
I guess, yeah.
Exist
and
with.
I guess you just think it's cool. Like if you're he kind of seemed like a little bit of a sociopath, like totally didn't care about people. Just like, yeah, like war is good for us. Like you definitely have to be a sociopath.
No,
I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I can't.
He's young. He's young, so he doesn't understand what that means.
Okay.
He's not been in war. He doesn't even know anyone that's been in war. You know what I mean? Like that generation, there's the older, like not even that much older, but like, in the, I'd say like 20.
He doesn't even know what it's like to work to get a trophy.
Exactly right. So I think that's the mentality. It's like he's playing battle on some fake battlefield.
Right. Well, it's just like the teachers and the activism thing, right? It's like the LARPing. It's almost like LARPing, like live action role playing. So you want to get the feeling that you're doing. It's like video games. You want to get the feeling that you're doing something. You want to get the dopamine. You want to get the social feedback.
Ew, is all I can say. Stop using children to get off. Ew. Even if it's not sexual, if it's just for you to feel better, you are victimizing our children. Back up. I don't know if I told you this, but Evie's going to high school this year. So I think I'm particularly amped up about teachers right now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having some.
That's okay. I saw technical difficulties.
Hello, there I am. I got all unfocused.
All I can say
having issues with my good camera and audio. I don't know why I'm having issues with it in StreamYard, so I'm just on my like little crappy camera. But I
think it looks kind of the
same.
Why
train and practice? We all get the same ribbon and trophy. That's true. That is true. We all, at the end of the day, we all end up in the same place.
Well, as you get into high school, everybody doesn't get a trophy. So eventually they have to learn that. But man, I remember when my kids were young, I was a little psychotic about this. I will admit I probably traumatized my kids and whatever, but I made my kids say to me, I'd say, why did you get this trophy? Did you win? Did you earn it? Why? And they'd say, I got it because everybody else got it and they don't want anybody else. They know exactly why they got that trophy. But my youngest didn't give a crap. She was like, I got it for participation and I still love it, Mom. I love it. Here's my trophy. She has all of her trophies, all of her medals.
I know, but it's like almost like a rebellion thing against you rather than like liking the thing. So I feel like that's fine too because she gets it, like she's just trolling you. My son does that. My son will just troll me like when he I don't know.
She legit really loved those trophies. I remember like one of them got knocked over and like the little soccer ball and she cried. I had to like glue it back together. And I was like, remember you didn't earn this. You didn't really win this one. And she's like, but Mom, it was mine. Oh my gosh. It's children really are.
She's going to be great. And, I know that it's high school, but you have it sounds like kind of a small high school. So there's that.
Well, she's not going to that high school.
She's going to Catholic.
Well, actually, no, we are probably going to send her to, there's a closer by 15 minutes, the Woodstock Academy, which is a very interesting school. So it is older than the public school system, And so the towns around it contracted with the private school because it didn't make sense. It's like back then it was like sparsely populated. I mean, it's still out here. But our town was not one of them. So that means we had to pay. And I'm like, why can't we just use our public school?
Yeah.
But, you know, I didn't, unfortunately, the Catholic school system that we were using, her class, and I think it's just because like the way that 2020 happened, there's only like 27 kids in her class. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay that much more and like drive 45 minutes every day there and back for like 10 more kids in your class. Because it's like more than 10, but she has about 10 kids in her class. So it's 15 more kids, let's say. I just felt like that's not worth it.
Right.
So we'll see. I mean, we're still kind of in decision-making mode right now, but I mean, I think it's clear she's going to try high school, which I'm completely in favor of. I mean, you know, I feel like she's a smart kid and she has such a strong base. And this is what I would tell all parents to do: inoculate your children. My kids know how I feel about all of this stuff. As I've learned, I've taught them what I'm learning about trans ideology, about how that happens, how social contagions work, all of that stuff. I mean, they still sometimes, you know, just because their kids don't agree with me, and that's fine. But in general, they're aware. So I don't think they're going to be like accidentally indoctrinated. Like, they will be aware. And, you know, my two older kids would come to me and say, I don't feel right about this essay, Mom. What do you think? And it would be like, explain why Trump is a racist. What? Are you freaking kidding me? We'd go in and have to talk to them. And then they'd be like, oh, wow. It was usually like the teacher off their rocker. It wasn't. And, you know, I'm not saying Trump was a saint, but come on. Like, can we pick a different topic? It was so absurd. Anyway, so yes, sometimes even in the private Catholic school, in the fancy pants boarding, I wouldn't call it elite, but it tries to be, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, all those schools they get kind of captured through their the boards that give them certification.
Yeah.
And like allow them into their different leagues or whatever they have. So it's everywhere. I like the idea of inoculation. I feel like my son is a little bit young for some of these topics, but I'm certainly getting there with the screen time and the sugar. And just like when we go to the store and he's asking for this or that, or he wants to get the box that has some character on it, I say, no, they purposely put the character on it so that you'll buy things that are poison.
They also put it at kids' height intentionally. I mean, that's a marketing strategy. You can thank Wharton Education for that. That's where, I mean,
I was telling somebody that you're at a disadvantage when you go into these stores because they purposefully put things in certain places. They have a whole science behind it. So you have to know these things going in.
But I will say, from a marketing perspective, they're not thinking we're going to poison children. They're thinking, how do I get more kids to enjoy our delicious, nutritious cereal?
I mean, I guess I don't know how you can like seriously though look at that and be like, oh yeah, nutritious and delicious. Like, you have to know you're full of shit.
Look, I can tell you in our house, on the only time that we ever had junk cereal, junk anything, was Saturday morning. And we each got to have, like, we had to share it, but we could everybody rotated and they would get their favorite cereal. Mine, by the way, disgusting, but it was Captain Crunch. And my God, I could not wait till it was my Saturday and we could have Captain Crunch. When you have a lot of kids, you don't get a lot of Captain Crunch. My mom is very smart that way, but still I got to have it, right? And so I have really great memories about various.
I know, because it's sugar.
Yes,
injected with sugar, and you're like, yay, it's so much fun.
Well, but we also didn't get to eat a lot of it, so it was always a treat. And so that's how I treat sugar in our house, is like, okay, occasionally, sure, you want to go out for ice cream, fine. My husband, on the other hand, he always had dessert every night after. We didn't have that at my house. It was like just one day a week we would have like something special at like after the meal for dessert, really on Thanksgiving or Christmas. It wasn't even like weekly that we had that. So that was a little bit different. And some of my kids like more sugar more than others, but it's a battle. All of it's a battle. But this stuff in the schools, I don't know. I mean, if I had a little kid, they would not have a choice. There's no way I would put my baby in the hands.
That's like me. I had him in for 1 year and I was like, nope. Yeah, that's the same thing for our friend here. She says that, or he, I'm not sure. My kid was punished covertly for being a Trump supporter.
Oh, yeah.
So they pulled them to homeschool. And I
Yep.
would say if you can,
I'm sorry that happened.
you should. You should. I think that it is a total, like, one of these things in the culture that people, oh, it's so hard to homeschool, or I wouldn't be good at it. It's nonsense, total nonsense. It's hard for everybody at first trying to establish that going from the parent-child relationship to doing that more teacher-child relationship. But you do it slowly but surely. You get into it. You get into your own routine, just like a teacher would at the beginning of the year with their class. And the other thing is, too, I even think that more people who think that it's out of their reach in terms of the resources are also, they have a misconception in that regard.
Yeah.
I think it's about what you value. You have to really take a look at, okay, well, what are my finances? What are some things that we could maybe not do so that we can do this? Maybe you don't go on that vacation, because schooling your kids is more important than going down to Florida once a year or something like that.
I think a lot of people have the capacity to not even change anything. I mean, depending on the age of their kid and their particular situation. I mean, there's a lot of different strategies, a lot of different ways that you can homeschool.
Yeah, I mean, find 4 other families.
Yeah.
And then you guys can each have a day. And that was sort of, we didn't do all the different days, but I had one other mom who I would do one day, she would do one day, and then we had a program that we did for 3 days. So, that's another thing. Find some other like-minded families, split it up, or all pool together to hire a teacher and things like that. So I think that it's way more accessible to way more people.
Especially now.
Right.
I've been homeschooling
working from home, all the different options.
What year did I start?
All the different shifts, right? Maybe you can work an overnight shift or something. Maybe you find another job. Like you go around and you apply to other jobs that offer the things that you need, whether it be closer, whether it be work from home or a more hybrid schedule. So I think that's what I'd like to leave people with tonight is yeah, there are a lot of things that are going on socially and politically and in the schools and in the streets, but I think there's also a lot of positive things that are happening that we're just, the revolution will not be televised. And it's not because the government is censoring social media. It's not because they control the airwaves, because they certainly do, right? Like,
yeah, it's because it happens quietly.
People are just leaving. They're just doing their own thing. They're just choosing not to comply and go on with their lives. And I have my criticisms of the people who are just like, live and let live. I was certainly one of those people for a long time. I don't think you can just live and let live. But I think that's sort of like, the first step. And you'll have your people who will go off and build that side of things. And then you'll have their people who be like, oh, we can't just live and let live. And they'll become more, activist type. But yeah, the revolution will not be televised, but it is happening. I truly believe that. And this next year and a half till the election, I do think is going to be one that is continuing this sort of like instability that we've had, although, the last year or so since the mask came off has been more, this veil of normalcy, I would say. It's stabilized a little bit. I think it's going to get a little bit more crazy in the next year and a half. But in the long term, I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic in the long term. I think that we're just at a difficult place right now. But we're going to get through it.
I'm glad you're optimistic. I'm trying to be optimistic. I have my moments. But yeah, I think homeschooling is an option, but also fighting back. I mean, it's in my town. we have a great group and we're doing a lot of good work, and 2WinCT is doing excellent work. And there's a lot of groups out there. There's No Left Turn, there's FAIR, there's tons of parent groups now. And that actually really is the most hopeful sign to me. And that really does like calm me down when I think, oh my gosh, we're never going to make any progress. We have to. There's so many groups out there. And I keep finding more and more popping up every day.
Exactly. And I will say also, to close out, I actually right now am offering a free membership to my website. So if you go to TeachingLiberty.org and you hit the become a member button and you choose the silver level, it's like silver, gold, Libertas. So choose silver and use code declaration23. And so you can join my site completely for free. And I'm actually going to be doing like a constitution course over the next 4 Sundays. It'll be like live, nice. And then there'll be replays. And if you're a member, you can access it like for free. So that'll be in there. Something we're doing. I already got like 10 people signed up. So some of them said that they aren't going to be able to make the live. One actually said she's in Switzerland, so it's like a time difference thing. But it's a discussion board. So we're definitely going to be going, back and forth beyond just the live space as well.
So starting this Sunday,
the
July 9th, right?
Yep.
At what time?
It's going to be at 9 p.m.
9 p.m.
It's going to go for about 1 hour. And like I said, I'll have the replays. So they'll be recorded and they'll be on there. So if you miss it or if you want to rewatch it, they'll be available. So definitely I encourage you to do it. And it's, it's one of those things too that you can share with your kids. Like 9 o'clock might be late, but they can watch the replay. I definitely encourage that. That was one thing I encouraged people to do yesterday was show your kids the Declaration, read it to them. They might not understand everything. They might get bored and walk away after a few minutes or whatever, but take the time, show it to them. And any day is really a great day to do it. And the time zone for the course is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yep, Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, there'll be replays. There's like a discussion board. So if you can't make the live, you can always leave your questions. We'll go back and forth in there. And it's something that I want to do more of. Like, so if there's something that you want to do, if there's like a different time zone that we can accommodate, we'll do more of that. So go to TeachingLiberty.org, become a member, and that's until the end of July. And then after that, you can pay now if you want to. It's sort of like a Patreon, you can pay me $5 a month or $10 a month if you want to right now. But I am just trying to build up a little base of people back there to kick things off.
That's awesome. Okay.
So yeah, so head over there, Danelle. We need you in there.
I will. Oh, I'm signing up. Believe me.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate you and your beautiful face and everybody's beautiful face out there, even ones that are 010101 beat.
I'm just saying they're 101 beat.
And I definitely appreciate Garth for checking in. He was in here earlier.
Nice.
Appreciate you guys. Make sure you like this video. Subscribe if you're new here. We are on every Wednesday night. I think, is this our new time? Like 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
And we cover Connecticut news, like stories, but as you can see, all of them have that national connection to them. Especially our Attorney General loves to get in on the political national politics here. So yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right.